The Steamdeck OLED is the best portable. I've had the ROG Ally and the Legion Go for long enough to say that I don't want them anymore. In fact, they're both gone. I either traded them, sold them, or they've been returned. The Steamdeck OLED is the only handheld gaming device that I need, and it's the only one I'm using, and it's the only one that I'm keeping. And if you're trying to decide between all of these, I think this will be the best for you too. So in this video, I'm going deep into the Steamdeck OLED. I'm comparing it between all the different popular devices, comparing it to the original Steam Deck, and most importantly, telling you why I chose this over all the other portable systems out there. So first, let's take a tour of the Steamdeck OLED. The first thing you'll notice is the orange and the translucent design. So I got really lucky, so I was able to get one of the limited edition models. Unfortunately, this version is gone, and I don't think it'll ever come back. But I love the frosted transparent shell, and I love these orange accents all throughout the design. It's really hard for me to go back and look at the original Steam Deck now, just in terms of the design. I hate to say that, especially since that this version isn't available anymore. So yeah, as you can see here, it's the same design, it's the same shape, it's the same build, it's the same plastic mold, but I guess like the color does make a good amount of difference. So that's what it looks like in the back. This is what it looks like from the top. And then there's just some additional styling details on the bottom where you get the orange screws. But if you do have the original Steam Deck, there are tons of third-party shells that can be had. The next thing that's immediately apparent is the weight. It's so much lighter than the original Steam Deck, and definitely lighter than the ROG Ally, and obviously definitely way lighter than the Legion Go. And when it comes to a portable gaming console, that is probably one of the most important attributes of it. Being able to hold this for a long time, taking this on the trip, it's not going to weigh down on you. I've been able to game with this for hours and hours at night, and I've had no problems holding on to this thing until the battery died. This is by far the most comfortable portable gaming device I have ever used. I love the grips on the left and the right. It really makes for an ergonomic experience. The button placement, the trackpad, the shoulder buttons, and even the back paddles are right where they should be. And these are really stiff, so you're not pressing them accidentally. The only time you're pressing these are if you want to. So that's a good thing about if you choose to map these buttons. My only gripe though is the D-pad and the face buttons are shoved all the way up to the top corner, so it's a little bit unnatural and a little bit uncomfortable compared to like if I was using like a regular gaming controller or something. See, as you can see here, this is the ROG Ally Pro. My thumbs just naturally fall right into the sticks, the pad even, and the face buttons. Same with the PlayStation 5 controller. This is still one of the most ergonomic and most comfortable controllers I've ever used, and this is coming from more of an Xbox fan, but we're not talking about the PlayStation controller today, but I just want to show how your hands just naturally rest on a regular controller compared to something like the Steam Deck, where my thumbs are forced to be positioned a little bit closer to my index finger. It's not a deal breaker or anything, but just a mild inconvenience when it comes to the ergonomics. Okay, so let's talk about the screen, and that's one of the main reasons you may want to upgrade from the original Steam Deck. So the resolution is still 1280 by 800, so you're not getting a bump up to 1080p like you are with the ROG Ally or 1440p plus with the Legion Go. But because of the performance that you're able to get out of this, I couldn't have asked for anything more than 720p. I think they made the right decision. So on other devices, yes, you can lower the resolution, but then you end up with like gross dithering because you're not running the panel at its native resolution. I have noticed that there's a lack of sharpness in some of the games that I play, but honestly, having OLED really makes up for it. It is a gorgeous display. Rumor is they contracted Samsung to manufacture these panels for Valve, so you're getting perfect blacks, amazing shadow detail, and deep rich colors, and the best part is it supports HDR, and HDR pops on the screen. The colors are nice and vibrant. I can immediately tell that it's a high bit panel, and it's got to be running at least DCI-P3. I didn't install Windows on this device, so I can't run it through my regular calibration. But I've looked at so many displays, I have an idea of how they perform, and this will perform like one of the better ones out there. So one thing I do want to point out though is the pixel array is a little bit unique. The way it's designed. So I found a really interesting Reddit post. I just Googled it in research for this video because I definitely noticed it. But so this is what the regular Steam Deck look like, which is standard. You got your standard RGB. But then this is what the Steam Deck OLED looks like. So if you zoom in, you can see that there is a larger blue area followed by a smaller green area and a even smaller red area, so it is susceptible to some color fringing. I have noticed in some situations the original Steam Deck could look a little bit sharper, and I'm guessing it's because of the pixel array, but like you really got to be pixel peeping. You have to be looking out for it. At the end of the day, I don't want to take anything away from this OLED screen. It is definitely way better than any other portable display I've ever seen, and I would say even including the Nintendo Switch. The thing is, once you play a game in HDR that supports it really well, it's almost impossible to go back to a non-gaming HDR display. The HDR highlights really get bright too. I couldn't run my measurements on them, but the highlights are really strong enough to give you that HDR pop that really can immerse you once the game supports it well. And I even compared it side by side to my Samsung G9 monitor in HDR, and they look very, very similar when comparing the colors, the contrast, and the HDR pop. So though this is a small screen, the overall quality of this panel makes gaming on the Steam Deck OLED feel like a premium experience. It gets fairly bright too, so you can even game outdoors. It's not as bright as something like an iPhone 15 Pro, but it's good enough for outdoor usage. And it also has a matte coating, and maybe I should spend some time talking about that. Depending on the SKU you get, it may either come with a glossy or a matte coating. There's a lot of debate about which one's better. I definitely prefer glossy screens because the displays look perceivably better on those panels, but this isn't an egregious matte coating though. Things still look pretty crisp and colorful. But I bet it would have looked better if it was glossy. If anyone has the glossy Steam Deck OLED and happen to look at both of them side by side, please let me know in the comments which one you prefer. Now let's talk about what it's like to game on this. It is fantastic. Just using it feels like a better experience than any of the Windows-based portable gaming systems I've ever used. The sense of input latency seems incredibly low, lower than the Steam Deck Original 2. It's one of the few portable systems that feels as fast and as fluid as a gaming console. Someday I need to find a way to test input latency, but if I was to bet on it, I would say that the Steam Deck OLED has lower latency than any of the other portable gaming systems I've used, except maybe the Nintendo Switch. I already mentioned how comfortable this device is. The Steam Deck OLED is super duper comfortable. I can game with this for 3-4 hours and not put it down. Usually the battery dies before I'm ready to be done with this. There are tons of different options to where you could go in there and you can spend hours playing around with all of these different settings. You can enable these back grip buttons, which I will for some games, just so I could keep my thumbs on the stick at all times. It'll take some muscle memory. You can adjust the different sensitivity of everything. And another thing that I've been using too is using the trackpad. I've been using it a lot more just to help navigate throughout the environment and also do some aiming too. And what I started doing too is just practicing aiming with this. The trackpad is incredibly accurate, so I've been playing around with this to try to get as good of an experience as I would get on mouse and keyboard. And the Steam Deck OLED, well actually I would say the Steam Deck in general, is the only device that's giving me the tools I need to really make this gaming experience my own. If you're into that, then that's awesome. If you're not into that, these controls are still the best in the business, I would say. Oh, and and another cool thing about this versus any of the other Windows devices is the standby mode. This can be off for days, weeks at a time. The moment you see it and you pick it up, the battery life is just about right where you left it because the standby battery is so good. and you just press that power button and you're immediately gaming again right from where you left off. So that makes this a much better experience for on-the-go type gaming. That's another reason why I don't have those other devices anymore. Alright guys, so next we gotta talk performance. So let's start off with Horizon Zero Dawn. It's a little bit complicated this time around just because they're very different devices. But anyway, so I have the ROG Ally with the Z1, with the Z1 Extreme. I also have the Legion Go and the Steamdeck. So I ran these all at 1080p. I essentially just plugged these devices into a external monitor and just ran my testing that way, just so I could get apples to apples scores. So when using the max performance setting on both the Legion Go and on the ROG Ally, turbo mode is what they call it on the ROG Ally. I got 46 FPS. On the regular Z1, I only got 28 FPS. And yeah, guys, I ran that several times. Those scores are legit. The Z1 chip is not a high performing part, at least when it's pushed to its limits with 25 watts. The Legion Go got 43 FPS. The Steam Deck is getting 30 FPS. I just threw that number in there because the Steam Deck maxes out at only 15 watts. So you're not running the Steam Deck at 25 watts. So what I ended up doing next, which is the more realistic way of how I use my portable devices, is I keep it unplugged and I leave it at the performance setting, which is at 15 watts. And then that's when you start to see some very interesting results. So all of a sudden, the Ally Z1 didn't really take too much of a hit in terms of the FPS. So we're down from 28 FPS to 25 FPS. The Z1 Extreme of the ROG Ally is at 30 FPS. I guess I didn't run the Legion Go, so I don't know what the scores are for that, but I expect something similar to the ROG Ally Z1 Extreme. And look at that, guys. The Steam Deck at its native 15 watts is essentially getting the same FPS as the Z1 Extreme. So when I looked at some of these numbers is when I decided, the way I'm going to be using my Steam Deck or any of the portable gaming devices, the Steam Deck just seems like it makes more sense to me. So let's look at Guardians of the Galaxy, which is a bit more graphically demanding. And when we're in turbo mode, the ROG Ally Z1 is getting 35 FPS. The Ally Z1 Extreme is getting 48 FPS. The Legion Go was getting 49 FPS. So yes, that was a win for the Legion Go in this particular title. And the Steam Deck gets 35 FPS. But remember, the Steam Deck doesn't actually have a 25 watt setting. I'm just showing what you're going to get on the Steam Deck no matter what, if you're plugged in or not plugged in, etc. So if you go down to the performance setting, 15 watts, which is what matches all of them, you'll see that the ROG Ally Z1 is getting 31 FPS, the ROG Ally Z1 Extreme is getting 40 FPS, and the Steam Deck is getting 35 FPS. So that's between a 12 and a 14% difference. It's fairly significant for more graphically intense titles, so that is something to keep in mind. So let's look at Shadow of the Tomb Raider. Still a very useful test because it really stresses the CPU, the GPU, and the memory. So the ROG Ally Z1 is getting 25 FPS, ROG Ally Z1 Extreme is getting 32 FPS, the Legion Go is getting 35 FPS. So I guess, guys, another win for the Legion Go for the Legion fanboys out there. So now let's look at the 15 watt setting, which is just performance on the ROG Ally. And then now you're getting 23 FPS on the Z1, 25 FPS on the Z1 Extreme, and 25 FPS on the Steam Deck. And so identical scores essentially in this title. So those are just 3 games that I tested. But just in general, just gaming, once I start gaming and getting into it, it doesn't really bother me. And remember, the ROG Ally and the Legion Go have higher native resolutions. With the Steam Deck, I'm playing at the regular 800p, and when I'm doing that, I'm getting similar or better frames than what the ROG Ally is doing at 1080p. And like I said, guys, for the purposes of what I want a portable gaming system for, that is perfectly acceptable for me. And on top of that, the battery life is substantially better on the Steam Deck OLED. It's about double from what I've tested. I've had Cyberpunk running on all 3 of these systems all three of them running the same resolution. On the ROG Ally, it was slightly different. It was like 720p instead of 800p like the rest of them because it's a different aspect ratio. And after 51 minutes, the ROG Ally died. Granted, I was using the turbo setting. And again, at that 51 mark, the Legion Go was at like 36%, and the Steam Deck OLED was at 61%. And that was at a higher brightness on that OLED screen and running at HDR. So to me, that's it. That's the reason why. After I ran that test, I just got rid of all those other devices and I just said, all right, I am keeping the Steam Deck OLED. And that is the portable device that's going to take me into 2024 and beyond. So I am going to leave it here. I want to do a deeper dive and maybe a tips and tricks like I did with the ROG Ally on the Steam Deck, because there is so much other stuff I didn't get to. So if you guys want to see that, leave a comment, leave a like, etc. I'll see you guys at the next one. Don't forget to subscribe. Thanks a lot, guys. Bye.